You did not accidentally click on this video. You have been led here by the Lord, not to be entertained, but to hear something your soul is in need of. Lord, do you see my tears? That question may have echoed in your heart many times, in lonely nights, in moments when you bowed your head with no one by your side. There are pains you cannot share, shattered dreams that you must quietly pick up on your own. The world sees you smiling, but only the Lord can see the heart that is bleeding. Have you ever prayed and felt as if the heavens were too silent? Have you ever pleaded in tears but saw no miracle happen? Do not be to think that the Lord is not listening. Do not assume that his silence means he does not care. In the Bible, Psalm 56:8 records, "The Lord has recorded my wanderings, the Lord has kept my tears in his bottle. Are they not in his book?" God is not a king on high who does not understand the suffering of the world. He is Jehovah Nissi, the one who bears the banner of victory for you in spiritual battles. He is Jehovah Shalom, the one who brings peace to the very stormiest place in your heart. And above all, he is Emmanuel, God with us. Today, do not run away from the pain. Bring it before the Lord, for the one you are searching for is actually the one who has been watching over you every day. And it is in this video that you will see, the Lord has not forgotten you. He sees, he hears, and he is preparing something good for you, even when you have not realized it. Keep watching, because the next segment will make it clear. God has never abandoned you for even a second. When we pause to reflect on waiting, we step into another story. When we speak of waiting, the human mind often immediately thinks of weariness, the feeling of being forgotten, or the sighs in the darkness. But in the eyes of God, waiting is never a meaningless void. It is a furnace where souls are forged, hearts are tested, and destinies are prepared to step into his divine program. And no one testifies to this more clearly than Joseph, the one who went from the depths of slavery to the pinnacle of Egypt's throne, not by chance, but by means of seemingly forgotten years. Joseph, the beloved son of Jacob, carried within him a dream from God, a dream of greatness, of honor, of a day when everyone would bow before him. But when he shared that dream with his brothers, envy arose. His own flesh and blood threw him down into a deep pit, sold him to a caravan of Midianite traders, as if selling an article of no value. And thus the heavenly dream was buried under the footsteps of the outcasts in the land of foreign Egypt. He became a servant in Pharaoh's house, but even there the Lord was with him, and he was raised up to be a steward. Just when it seemed that light was beginning to shine, the trial returned. Falsely accused, Joseph was thrown into a dark prison, a place where dreams often fade away in the night. There was no singing there, no one to offer praise, only cold stone walls and silent ears. And it was in that darkness that the Lord did not forget him. He used the dreams of his fellow prisoners and the divine wisdom within Joseph to open a door that no one expected, the throne of the Egyptian empire. You intended to do evil to me, but God intended to do good, to bring about the survival of many people, just as it is today. Genesis 50:20. That is the testimony of one who has lived through a season of waiting, not in bitterness, but in the faith that the Lord never forgets those who belong to him. From the depths of imprisonment, Joseph became the second most powerful official in the mightiest kingdom of that time. But pause and ask yourself, what prepared him for that? It was the years that seemed to have been abandoned. It was the silence of the Lord in the dark prison. It was the faithfulness in every small thing. That was not passive waiting. It was proactive preparation for a great mission. Recall Abraham, the one who waited nearly a century to receive the promise. He and Sarah went through every human hope to see the word of the Lord fulfilled. In the midst of waiting, there were moments when he doubted, when he made mistakes, but the Lord still kept his word. When the laughter of the child was born, it was not only new life, it was the confirmation that the promise of the Lord never comes late, nor is it ever mistaken. Consider Moses, who grew up in Pharaoh's palace, but was then cast out into the wilderness for 40 years. He might have thought his life was over, that it had passed by in vain. But in those 40 years, the Lord trained him, taught him how to tend sheep, how to live humbly, how to hear his voice in silence. And then, when the thorny dust blazed forth, Moses knew that the time had come, the time for him to step into a plan greater than himself 1,000-fold. Without those 40 years of waiting, Moses could never have stood before Pharaoh with the authority of heaven. Then David, the young man, anointed as king. But he did not ascend to the throne immediately. He was pursued, living as a fugitive, wandering in caves, even feigning madness to escape the hands of his enemies. In all of that, he did not rebel, did not become angry with the Lord. He wrote, "Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for him." Psalm 37:7. And it was that waiting that forged a king who not only had authority but possessed a heart pleasing to the Lord. If you are in a season where everything seems frozen, do not lose heart. Perhaps you see no movement outwardly, but within, the Lord is refining you. He is building within you that which his power will use for tomorrow. Imagine a seed buried under a layer of dark earth. No one sees it, no one praises it, but inside, life is bursting forth. Then one day, it breaks through the earth, reaching up into the sky, and people marvel at its beauty. But only the Lord knows, it is the darkness that has forged its strength. Let the story of Joseph remind you. Silence is not the absence of the Lord, it is preparation. Let the testimony of the wife who prayed for 7 years remind you that waiting in the Lord is never in vain. But those who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. Isaiah 40 verse 31. Be steadfast where you stand. Be faithful in the little things. Stand firm even when no one sees. For the Lord, the one who was with Joseph in prison, is also with you in that silent room. And one day not far off you will see, not a single drop of your tears is forgotten, not a single prayer falls to the ground in vain. All is being gathered, being used by the Lord to prepare for that which you could not have imagined. And when that day comes, you will say like Joseph, "You intended to do evil to me, but God intended to do good." Waiting is not a sign that you have been forgotten. It is the way that God is preparing you for something extraordinary beyond all that you have ever hoped for. From Joseph, we turn to another story about delay and the power of resurrection. When the sisters of Lazarus, Martha and Mary, sent for someone to meet Jesus, in their hearts there was a desperate blend of firm faith and despair. "Lord, the one whom the Lord loves is sick," they said, hoping that this news would spur the healer to hurry, to overcome every barrier, to reach in time to save the beloved one from the hand of death. But what happened next left many hearts bewildered. Jesus, who had healed the blind, made the lame walk, cleansed the lepers, did not hurry. He remained where he was standing for 2 more days. And when he set forth, Lazarus had died. Not only had he died, but he had been buried for 4 days. Perhaps at that moment, Martha had stood outside the entrance to the village of Bethany and gazed toward the horizon. Perhaps she had looked up many times each time she heard the sound of footsteps, hoping that it was her teacher, that final hope. But the one who came was not Jesus. And day by day, Lazarus weakened and then drew his last breath. The elder sister embraced her brother in tears. The younger sister cried until she had no words left. And in the 4 days of waiting after death, surely in their hearts there were questions without answers. Why did he not come? He knows clearly. Why the delay? When at last Jesus arrived in the village, Martha could not hide her sorrow, but she also could not hide her faith. "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But I know that until now, whatever you ask of God, he will grant." A faith filled with tears, no longer certain, but not yet abandoned. And in that very moment, the Lord did not hurry to speak much. He did not explain why he was delayed, nor did he offer any deep theological reasoning. He simply said, "Your brother will rise." We may ask, why did the Lord not come sooner? He loves Lazarus, loves Martha and Mary, does he not? But the words the Lord spoke to the disciples from the beginning give us a clue. This illness is not unto death, but for the glory of God, that the Son of God may be glorified through it. His delay was not a rejection, but a purposeful step to prepare for an event that no one could deny, the power of resurrection, the power that only God can manifest. Lazarus was raised from the dead, Before the witnessing of many people, from those who lamented to the skeptics, Jesus cried out, "Lazarus, come forth." And the dead stepped out, wrapped in grave clothes. Death was subdued, and the name of God was glorified. And so, we learn a truth. The Lord may come late according to the clocks of men, but he is never late according to his program. He does not follow your schedule, but he is always on time according to the sacred moment that he ordained before the earth was formed. Let us look back to the Old Testament. The people of Israel were imprisoned in Egypt for 400 years. They prayed, they cried out, they waited. Perhaps many generations died in that waiting without seeing the promise fulfilled. But when the time was right, God called Moses, the one who seemed to have been forgotten in the wilderness, and sent him to be the instrument of liberation. 400 years. It may seem like silence, but in that silence, the Lord was preparing a miracle that would change an entire nation, a plan beyond human understanding. Romans 8:28 records, "And we know that all things work together for good to those who love God." But to see all things work together, time is needed. A clock is assembled by hundreds of gears, but when only a few parts are in place, you do not understand what is happening. It is only when every piece is complete that you see the perfect operation. The Lord does not hurry, for he is putting each piece together in a holy and precise manner. Faith is not only believing when the miracle happens, but continuing to believe when the miracle has not yet arrived. When the heavens are silent, when the Lord has not answered, when everything seems delayed, that is when true faith is being tested. And every minute you persist in the silence of the Lord is a minute in which he is writing a program greater than you can imagine. He is delayed, not because he forgets. He postpones, not because he changes his mind. He is silent, not because he is indifferent. It is precisely in that delay that he expresses something greater, something that if it came sooner, you would never have learned the lesson of trust. Lazarus was raised not only to live, but so that everyone may know. The giver of life is not constrained by time, and miracles are never late when they come from the hand of God. Therefore, if today you are living in waiting, if you have prayed for many years without seeing an answer, if you look around and wonder why others have their prayers answered and you do not, remember, perhaps you are in the second day, the third day, but the fourth day is coming, the day when Lazarus steps out of the tomb, the day when you look back and see, the Lord never refuses. He is only preparing something greater than what you have asked for. And when that happens, you will understand why he allowed you to wait. For the delay of the Lord is precisely the miracle being written among those lines of silence that only those who dare to believe can read with eyes of faith. The waiting, the refining, and the silence. We continue the journey into another aspect. In every generation, those who belong to the Lord go through the same silent journey, the journey of waiting. Not in resounding victory, not amid dazzling miracles, but in silence, where no one knows, no one understands, no one claps. That is the waiting room of the Lord, where faith is not only awakened, but is refined like iron heated in a furnace. There is no shortcut to glory, no strong faith that does not pass through darkness. And it is there that the chosen one is molded to carry the lifelong purpose. Jacob likened this to a farmer waiting for the precious crop of the land. Be patient, be steadfast, for the Lord's coming is near. James 5:7-8. The farmer cannot force time, cannot hurry, nor can he do the work of earth and heaven. His job is to sow, then patiently wait for the rain, believing that every seed he places in the ground will not rot in vain. Likewise, the one who trusts in the Lord in the spiritual waiting room is not invited to sit there in despair, but to wait in anticipation, to wait with faithfulness, to wait with living faith, to wait like a farmer who is sure that the harvest day will come, even though no sprout has yet broken through the ground. Someone once asked, if the Lord knows all and his power is unlimited, then why does he not answer immediately? The answer does not lie in the question when, but in the question, who are you while waiting? In truth, what you are waiting for is not as important as the person you are becoming while waiting. It is during that time that the Lord teaches you to listen, teaches you to believe when you cannot see, teaches you to obey when you do not understand, and teaches you to pray tirelessly, even when no response is received. Recall those people who waited and were transformed. Abraham waited 25 years for a promised child. During that time, he may have doubted, may have planned on his own, but in the end he learned that a promise from the Lord never fails. And it was that waiting that made him the father of faith, who in the Bible is called the friend of God. Not because he was perfect, but because he was refined in the waiting room. Consider Elijah, the prophet ablaze with the fire of Jehovah. After the victory on Mount Carmel, he thought his mission was completed, but then he was pursued, worn out, exhausted under the myrrh tree and wished to die. But the Lord did not blame him. He led him on a 40-day journey into the wilderness, to Mount Horeb, where there is no thunder and lightning, no earthquake, only the soft sound of the wind, where he learned that true power does not lie in outward strength, but in the gentle and silent presence of the Lord. Had it not been for the time in the mountain, Elijah would never have heard the voice of the Lord in the still wind. The waiting room is where you learn to live by the promise rather than by the result. It is where you pray not to demand, but to commune. It is where you sow tears, but believe that those tears are not wasted. As Psalm 126:5 has written, "Those who sow in tears shall reap with joy." The silent prayers in the night, the times you choose to obey rather than give up, the times you forgive instead of retaliating, all are seeds in the waiting room, and in due season, they will bloom. Jesus himself was once in the waiting room. He did not begin his ministry at the age of 12, although he had taught in the temple. He did not act at the age of 25, even though he understood all things. He waited until the age of 30, for that was the time the Father had appointed. In 30 years of silence, he lived as an unknown carpenter, learning to obey, living among people, enduring contempt, and no miracle was recorded. But it was those 30 years that prepared for the final 3 glorious years, for him to preach, to heal, to suffer, and to redeem all humanity. If Jesus waited, then you and I must learn to wait. Not to wait passively, but to wait with purpose. Not to wait as the hopeless, but as one who knows that the promiser is faithful. And when you step out of the waiting room, not only will a miracle accompany you, but the new person within you will be born. A person who knows patience, who knows obedience, who knows how to listen, and who knows how to love rightly. The Lord does not only want to give you what you ask for, he wants to transform you so that you are worthy of it. And that transformation does not happen on stage, but backstage, where no one sees, where only you and the Lord are. Therefore, if you are in a season of waiting, do not be disheartened. Do not compare yourself with others. Let the word of the Lord be your root. Continue to pray, continue to do what is right, continue to trust, for soon the harvest will come. And at that time you will see what you have been waiting for is nothing compared to the person you have become while waiting. That is the most precious gift from the waiting room of the Lord. Besides waiting, there is also a wondrous peace that comes only from the Lord. There is a peace that does not come from every question being answered, nor from every difficulty being resolved, but only appears when a person dares to let go of their control and place their trust in the formless yet true one. That peace is not like the forced silence of fear, but is the rest in the arms of one who never fails, even though he chooses silence in the moment when you are most in pain. Psalm 46:10 resounds like a whisper amid the storm. Be still and know that I am the Lord. That is not a cold command, but a gracious invitation, inviting you to withdraw from the battle of reason, of worry, and silently step into the refuge of trust. Long ago, during the most inexplicable moments in the history of God's people, there were those who learned this lesson, not through persuasion, but through survival. When the people of Israel stood between two forces, in front, the unparted Red Sea, and behind, the mighty Egyptian army pursuing them, they were frightened, they blamed, they cried out. But Moses, the servant of Jehovah, said to them, "Be still, for the Lord will fight for you." And then, while the wind blew all night, the water parted, the way was made, and the people passed through as if walking on dry land. It was precisely in that long night, in the moment when it seemed as if all hope was buried beneath the surging waves of life, that God acted, not because the people cried out too much, but because he had resolved to save. There are things that are only revealed when you choose silence. Not because the Lord needs you to be silent in order to listen more clearly, but because you yourself need silence for your heart to cease its frantic beating. When you stop struggling to understand everything, you begin to hear his voice in the gentle breeze. Elijah, who once fled in fear, when it seemed as if the whole world had turned its back, expected the Lord to appear in burning fire, in earthquakes, in storms, but the Lord came in the sound of a gentle wind. And it was in that fragile sound that he heard the confirmation that he was not alone, he was not futile, he was not forsaken. True peace does not come from having an answer, but from knowing clearly who holds the outcome. The Lord is not bound by time. He is the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. Therefore, his delay is not a postponement, but the operating at the proper time. Just as a great conductor does not hurry to the climax, God writes the melody of your life with the tempo of heaven. Perhaps you are living in the slow section, where the rhythm seems to stop, where the music is interrupted, where there is no more resounding drum, nor a joyful tune. But it is precisely in that silence that the Lord is preparing the refrain that every angel will praise. Jesus also once stepped into the storm with a wondrous peace. When the disciples struggled with the waves on the Sea of Galilee, when water overflowed into the boat, when every hope seemed lost, what was he doing? He was sleeping, not because he did not care, but because he knew that no wind exceeds his authority. When the disciples awakened him with shouts, "Teacher, we are perishing," he spoke a word to which even the sea obeyed, "Be still, be quiet." And immediately the wind ceased and the waves were still. But before he made the sea calm, he expected the hearts of men to be calm first. He asked, "Why are you afraid? Where is your faith?" We are afraid not because of great waves, but because our hearts are not steadfast. We panic not because life is unstable, but because our hearts are not set on the unchanging one. Therefore, true peace is not when there is no storm, but when you can sleep soundly amid the storm, just as Jesus did. And you can only do that when you clearly know the one who is with you in the boat is the one who has set the limits for the ocean. God is never caught by surprise. He does not need to adjust the plan. He is never late, nor does he ever miss. What you think is postponement is in fact the way he gives you an opportunity to grow. No one likes delay. But if you dare to sit quietly in it, you will learn what no one can teach you by theory. That is steadfastness in the midst of trials, unconditional gratitude, and eyes that see beyond what the eye sees. Let your silence become a symbol of trust. Let your tears be the testimony to undying hope. And when you quietly step through the darkness, do not forget that there is one who is still walking beside you, hearing every word you whisper, and silently preparing what your heart has not dared to long for. He said, "Be still and know that I am the Lord." Not know as a theoretical understanding, but to know through living experience, to know with a heart that once pounded in fear, then was calmed by his presence. And it is precisely when you learn to be silent amid the delay that you will hear his voice. Not the sound of thunder, not burning fire, but a whisper. "I see you. I hear you. Let me act." And when the Lord acts, no door is closed, no shackle remains unbroken, no dream is too late, no pain is wasted. All you need to do is hold fast and be silent, for God is at work. Even when you do not see, do not hear, do not understand, he is still at work, in silence, in delay, but always at the right moment. Even in that delay, remember that human plans cannot compare with the program of the Lord. There are times in life when people think that they have fully planned, have already mapped out every step, have prepared everything perfectly to reach the destination they desire. People calculate the days and months, devise every scheme, set up dreams, and plead with the Lord to confirm with a seal the plan they have prepared. But Jehovah, the one who transcends space and time, is not bound by the logic of mere mortals. Proverbs 19:21 records, "Many are the plans in a person's heart, but it is the purpose of the Lord that will prevail." People may think that they are ready, but only the Lord clearly knows which moment is sacred and which plan is the one that leads to true blessing. He does not oppose people making plans, but he always emphasizes it is his program, not the individual desires of mankind, that is ultimate, complete, and never erroneous. Look back at the story of Abraham and Sarah, a vivid testimony to the surpassing wisdom of the Lord. They were the chosen couple to beget a nation, the people of Israel, out of which the Messiah would be born. But that choice came with a journey full of delay and trials. When the Lord promised Abraham that he would become the father of many nations, he was nearly 75 years old, while his wife, Sarah, was in her youth. The promise was so great, yet the circumstances were so paradoxical. And then the years passed. No child, no sign, not one confirmation other than the original promise. They grew old, and in impatience, they made their own plan, to have Ishmael be born through Hagar. That was a choice coming from human reasoning, from human initiative, from temporary wisdom. But the Lord did not confirm that plan. Though he loved Ishmael, he affirmed that the promise would be fulfilled through a child born of Sarah, the official wife, the one regarded as barren. The couple had to wait nearly a century, exactly 95 years from their wedding day, before embracing their firstborn. And when Isaac was born, the laughter of the couple was not only the joyful exultation of elderly parents, but a declaration that nothing is too late for the Lord, and no human plan can substitute for his perfect program. It is precisely in that delay that Abraham's faith was refined. It is precisely in that prolonged silence that Sarah's patience was tested. And it is precisely at the moment when hope seemed lost that the Lord did what no one had expected, to ensure that every glory belongs solely to him. People often say, "I am ready," but the Lord says, "I know what you need." Perhaps you feel that you have grown enough to enter into a relationship, a job, a position. But the Lord sees the hidden corners of your heart that you have not yet seen. He sees the unrefined pride, sees the fears not yet confronted, sees the barren lands in your soul that need to be irrigated with his word. And he loves you too much to give you something when you are not truly ready to hold it with spiritual maturity. Therefore, sometimes he is slow, not because he forgets, but because he is preparing. Think of Joseph, the one who was revealed that he would stand above his brothers, that others would bow in respect. But instead of immediately ascending to the throne, he was thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, falsely accused, and imprisoned. 13 years passed. No one remembered his name. No one testified to the promise he had seen in a dream. But it was precisely those years that transformed a young man with great dreams into a humble, upright man, capable of leading an empire in a time of famine. Had he ascended sooner, perhaps he would have become arrogant. If he had not been tested, perhaps he would have repaid with vengeance instead of forgiveness. But the program of the Lord, even though full of delays, had forged an official with a steadfast heart. And this is also true of Jesus himself. When he lived among the world, people expected an immediate Messiah to come, to deliver them from Rome, to restore power to the Jews. But he did not hurry. He waited 30 years to begin his ministry, a ministry that lasted only 3 years, yet shook the course of human history. He did not act according to the expectations of the people. He did not ascend as king, did not wield a sword, did not fight battles. He chose the cross, a symbol of defeat for mankind, to accomplish the greatest victory in all eternity. The plan of the Lord is not like a human plan, for his plan does not only touch on the temporary, but reaches into the eternal. The Lord does not promise to act according to your schedule, but he promises that his plan is perfect for your sake and not against you. He does not give you what you want immediately, because he is giving you what you need first. That is, maturity, obedience, steadfastness, and unwavering faith. Your plan might be good, but the plan of the Lord is greater than anything you can imagine. For when he acts, he not only delivers one person, but blesses an entire generation. When he postpones, he is not slowing down, but waiting for the perfect moment for every piece of your life to fall into place. Therefore, if you are living in a season of waiting, if you see your plan falling apart, if you feel that the Lord is turning away, remember that Abraham had to wait. Joseph had to wait. and even Jesus had to wait. And if you dare to lay down your own plan to receive his program, you will not only receive what is good, you will receive something great that only the Lord can give. And when that happens, you will say, as Sarah smiled, "The Lord has made me laugh. Everyone who hears will laugh with me." For those who wait in faith will reap in glory, and the plan of the Lord always is greater than anything mankind has ever conceived. And finally, remember, oh, beloved brothers and sisters silently watching this video, if today your heart is heavy, if your soul is in the midst of a weary waiting journey without any answer from on high, then please do not hastily let go. Do not let the silence make you think that the Lord is not listening. Do not let the delay make you doubt his love. And do not, because you see no way, hastily follow your own idea. For when you think that he is delayed, in truth he is preparing a gift at the right time, a better door, an answer beyond expectation, and a more complete ending than anything you have ever planned. Let God act. Let him be the one at the helm, not you. Let your faith be steadfast even when you do not see the next step. Do not only seek miracles, but seek the one who works miracles. Do not plead according to your own will, but learn to pray, "Our Father, may your will be done." For his plan is not only right, but good, acceptable, and complete. Remember the words recorded in Proverbs 3:5-6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. If you have ever prayed and seen no change, then be steadfast. Perhaps heaven is busy working on your behalf. The prayers you think have fallen into the void are in truth being gathered, lifted up, and woven into a miracle that you have not yet imagined. Have faith, wait, and walk with gratitude, for the Lord has never taken his eyes off you. And if today's message touches you, please comment below. The Lord is always with me. Please share this video to sow hope in the hearts of others. And do not forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell to continue receiving the word of the Lord from Jesus Stories. The Lord sees your tears. The Lord hears your silent cries. And he, the faithful God, will never forget a single prayer.